Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Where were you?
Oh, Gene, I'm so sorry. I'll never hurt you or anyone ever again.
It's too late.
No!
You can't hide.
No, Gene!
I've been trying to find the Wolverine for over a year.
It's not who I am anymore.
My employer wants to say thank you for saving his life all those years ago.
That is a time when our enemies knew honor. I wanted to offer you something no one else can. A gift. You have struggled long enough. I can end your eternity. Make you mortal. What they did to me. What I am. Can't be undone. Don't be so sure. I'm not healing like before.
His flesh is weak now.
Eternity can be a curse. A man can't run out of things to live for. That day ain't here yet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Geekfest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone, and joining me here once again, I have Steve Avona. Say hi, Steve.
Hey, Carlos.
Today, we are going to talk about one of the, possibly the last superhero-y summer film. Possibly,
Yeah.
I mean,
I think for
I think this is-
superheroes, yeah.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about the Wolverine, as opposed to Wolverine Origins, as opposed to just plain old X-Men. This is
Yep.
the Wolverine.
Oh, Wolverine.
And unusual film to have come out in a way for me because of the fact that the previous one didn't do that well in
I
terms
think
of
sucked.
review-wise, and I don't know, money-wise, if it probably made good money,
It made about 175 million domestic.
but it was no huge, gigantic.
No, it was a disappointment critically, and I guess commercially, I mean, it did well enough that it got a sequel.
Right. Now, can you tell us a little about, if you remember, the process of how this film was put together in terms of the different directors that...
Well, yeah. Was it Darren Aronofsky?
Yep.
Was going to be the original director who Hugh Jackman had worked with previously on The Fountain.
Yeah.
And he dropped out. And I remember Hugh Jackman was very upset because it's a process to get himself all buffed up and in Wolverine shape. And the movie was pulled, the plug was pulled at the 11th hour. And they had no director, so it got put on the shelf. And, for a second there, I didn't know if it was going to get made.
You're right. Now, from the beginning, from as long as I can remember, they've always wanted to do a Japan theme story.
Well, here's where I can bring in my comic book knowledge, my extensive comic book knowledge.
Whip it out.
In 1982, there was a Wolverine miniseries written by Chris Claremont and drawn by the amazing Frank Miller, who even you must know who he is.
Yes, I know Frank Miller.
And it really was one of the defining, if not the most defining, Wolverine story ever. And it was set in Japan. And, very much themes of honor and code and all these kinds of things, fitting in with the samurai, kind of paralleling Wolverine with the samurai. It was a great story, amazing art. And there was always talk that they would adapt it as a movie. I was actually kind of surprised that they didn't do it in the first film, the first Wolverine film. but they had, I believe, a little tag at the end of Wolverine, like their mid-credits or post-credits scene that he's in Japan. I mean, I don't know if I'm imagining
I don't
this.
remember that.
But I'm pretty sure.
Check it out.
I'm pretty sure that they let that out of the bag after the first one. So yeah, this film is a very loose adaptation of that story. And as a matter of fact, I mean, I read it when it first came out, but I reread it right before I saw the movie, and it definitely captures the spirit of that miniseries, and the heart of it, the themes of it. A lot of the same characters are in it, but of course, in that story, you had other X-Men. And so it didn't, so we didn't use any of the, I mean, except for Jean Grey, who appears in these. We'll get to that later. But yeah, so other X-Men appeared and whatever. The movie is, like I said, it's a loose adaptation that really keeps the spirit of the comic. I think it does a great job in doing that, and also in sort of taking it off into its own story. Using the comic as a blueprint, but not literally adapting it word for word. It's sort of a much looser, more general.
I like the fact that it was more of a down-to-earth, I don't want to say more believable, but less, obviously, supernatural, spacey type of film. It was more of, he's fighting ninjas. He's fighting regular killers that are not super villains.
Super powered.
I mean, obviously, you have some big...
The Silver Samurai at the end.
That lady with the tongue and all that.
Viper.
Yeah. But there's a lot of just regular one-on-one type of stuff, and you can tell that he's not completely immune to just regular people coming after him. And obviously with this movie, and if you can tell us a little bit of the story itself, the hook is the fact that there's a possibility that he could lose his powers.
Right.
Because that's what they promise him.
Right.
From this World War II original.
This person that he knew. This is like right off the bat diverges from the comics. There's this prologue set in World War II where he rescues a Japanese soldier from the bombing of Nagasaki.
Right.
And 70 years later, this man, he's obviously been searching for Logan for all these years, and he is dying, and he wants to live, and he offers Wolverine the proposition of, you can become mortal and I'll take your immortality. I've devised a way, with all my gadgets and the whammajamas and the MacGuffins to suck out your immortality, and you can become just normal. And it's I guess an intriguing proposition to him, but I don't know that he ever actually says yes. I think
that's a good point.
I think it just kind of happens.
Right, because he seems to be just protecting the granddaughter.
Right. And that's from the comic. The love story is from the comic. He does fall in love with this Japanese woman. And also the other mutant Japanese girl, Yukio, is with the red hair, the one who looks like she's an anime girl.
Yeah.
She's out of the comic, too.
She is a mutant. She has a power.
Yeah, she has she can predict. She is like a future casting.
Okay,
yeah.
Because in the movie it wasn't.
I don't think she had that in the comic.
Because they really didn't go too crazy on her power.
No, they didn't. She's more with the natural sword fighting.
Right, and again, that to me brings it more down to earth.
Right.
And he's very haunted by Jean Grey in this film.
The death of Jean Grey. He wants to have nothing to do with being an X-Man or a hero or any of that stuff. He's really kind of given up on life. And that scene with the bear, that's right out of the comic.
Oh, that was so cool.
That was out of the comic. Yeah, so, and then when he goes to Japan and he meets this man, that man is a character in the comic, but he's not an old friend from the war. In the comic, he's a crime boss. He's an enemy. He's not somebody who
So the
was
guy
ever
who
his
saves
friend.
is a different character?
He's the same character, but he's just not who he was in the comic.
Oh, okay.
He's just a straight-out criminal crime boss. But in the movie, they make him an old friend from back in the day. I mean, obviously, spoilers. He does turn out to be the villain of the movie.
And that's something I was a little disappointed with. And again, to me, it had a little bit of an Iron Man Jeff Bridges type of vibe of, the guy who you thought was your friend is really the bad guy. And not only is he the bad guy, but he's going to wear the big flashy robot suit type of thing,
that surprised me only because I knew in the comic he was the villain, and I'm trying to figure out in the movie who's the villain. And I'm like, well, he's a nice guy. He's not the villain.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden at the end, oh, yeah, he is the villain. Because in the comic, the Silver Samurai was her brother.
See, that would have made more sense to me.
Right. So I assumed the character who was most like her brother in the movie was her father.
Because the nasty,
Yeah, because he was a real bastard.
overbearing.
Yeah, but it turns out, no, he's not. And I was like, okay. And then I thought maybe it's the other guy.
The fiance that wasn't allowed to marry her.
No, not him. The
one that was supposed to marry her. They wanted to marry her. Oh, the other
friends from childhood.
Yeah.
things. I'm like, is it him? And then you saw them together, and I'm like, well, no, it's not. So yeah, they made a lot of alterations, but at the end of the day, it was the grandfather. He was the big bad guy. But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It just was not a very literal adaptation of the comic.
Now, does he lose his steel claws,
His claws in the comic?
in the comic?
You know, no, I don't think so.
Does he ever go to like the bone stuff in the comics? Or is that something they
there
brought
are
in?
so many comics. I can't honestly tell you. It might have happened at a certain point, but I can't honestly tell you. I don't remember. But not in that particular comic did he go to the bone claws.
I also liked, and you kind of mentioned before, not only the bomb sequence, and again, I kept
That was
wishing...
pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really well made, and they kind of made it so that the guy he saves wasn't that bad of a guy. He was the guy who's trying to let the prisoners go because he knows that the bomb's coming and they got to get the hell out of there.
Right. But he didn't have the heart to kill himself like the other
No,
Japanese
that was
soldiers.
kind of cool too. The fact that not only that, but later part of that monument that they're sitting in front of, it's still there.
Is the well?
And he can kind of tell where
Yes.
things are. Like, this is where we were hiding, and that's where those guys were, committing harikari or something.
Yeah.
It's like, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
At first, when they introduced his adopted daughter, is that the girl with the weird hair?
Yes.
At first, I was like, is she part of the bad guys? But
Right.
And they kind of do it on purpose, I guess. They want you to keep you guessing.
Mm-hmm.
But then it kind of settled a little bit. It did get a little confusing also in the middle because they're introducing, like we mentioned before, this guy is the guy your dad wants you to marry, who's a complete dirtbag.
Right.
And this guy who's kind of looking after her hidden, like as part of this ninja thing,
cult, yeah.
is the guy that she originally wanted to marry but
Right.
wasn't allowed to or something. So it's like, but wait a minute, is he working for the father or is he
It
part
did
of
get
something
a little
separate?
confusing, yeah.
Are the ninjas part of the bad guys or are the ninjas a separate group? Do you remember any of this from the comics?
In the comic, she did have the jerky fiance.
Yeah.
He was there. In the comic, Logan and she fell in love.
Right.
And the father, who was her grandfather in the movie, did not like that. He did not like Wolverine. I'll call her anime girl. Yukio is her name. Her name in the comic and in the movie is Yukio.
She's got like pink hair or something.
Yeah, she looks like an anime girl. And in the comic, she is very much a similar character, but in the comic, it's very explicit that she falls in love with Wolverine.
See, that's what
In the comic, they do kind of get together, but he is in love with Mariko, who is his granddaughter / daughter, whatever you want to say. And in the comic, they actually get engaged, and they're going to get married. And then that's when Viper and the Silver Samurai come in and they screw everything up, and the X-Men have to come in and fight them and everything.
Now, and I did get that feeling that when I was watching the movie that the anime girl, that she was going to be his love interest.
Right.
I'm like, she's connecting with him more.
I know.
But I know he's here to protect so-and-so, so I thought it was kind of like, okay, I'm here to protect this because I owe you one, or you're my friend, so I'm doing you a favor, but I'm falling in love with this girl in the meantime. But no, they didn't go that way. They went a completely different route.
Right.
The other thing is, can you tell me a little more about this Viper character? Because is she like a freelance mutant that works for bad guys, or is she part of Magneto at all?
Well, in the comic,
because she's like the only, if you think about it, the only real mutant out there in this movie, other than Wolverine, of course.
She has been in the comics for years and years and years, and she's not just been an X-Men villain. She's fought them all. She was a member of Hydra. Now, Hydra, if you remember, was
World War
in
II.
Captain America. The organization Hydra.
Okay.
Now, they haven't used them in the modern Marvel movies yet, but it's not to say that they won't. Okay. But,
Because Hydra survives the war, I
yes.
guess?
Well, yeah, they should. But in the movie world, they're a little different than they are.
They pick and choose.
Yeah. But yeah, she fought Captain America, and she's fought all these other characters. So Hydra is this terrorist organization, for lack of a better word. And in the comics, she's heavily involved with them. I mean,
We haven't seen her yet, have we? In any shape or form?
Not until this movie.
Okay, good. Because I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, is she part of it? Have we seen her?
No.
And what's her power, other than the she spits like venoms or something?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, I might get crucified because, You know, I'm a comic book reader, but when you're talking about 40 years of comics that I've read, you mess things up. I don't think in the comic she has any special powers. What she might be able to do in the comic is like kiss you and kill you, like
Hydra.
a poison ivy kind of a thing.
Okay.
I'm
Hydra,
talking
Hydra.
about no. I'm talking about Viper.
Viper. Okay.
But I don't
All
know
right.
that she's a mutant,
Huh. Because, I mean, as far as the movie goes,
and she's not a freelance.
she's got this huge tongue thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
That I
She's
don't
very
remember from the
athletic.
comic. Yeah.
Okay. And she does seem to be able to pass on like some kind of poison
Yeah.
to her victims.
Yeah, that might be the case in the
Okay.
comic, but I don't remember, and I don't think so. And also, just to go on that thread, the Silver Samurai.
I was going to ask you.
He
is
was
it-
just a guy in a suit. He wasn't like the way he was in the movie.
Well, in the movie, it was a guy in a suit.
Yeah. But he's like not. Isn't it just like the head and torso? Like, was
I
it his
thought-
body?
I thought his whole body
Oh,
was.
okay,
I'm
okay.
assuming. I mean, we never saw it, but
Yeah.
I never got the feeling that they like chop off his head or something and
Because
stuck it in the body.
Speaking of Jeff Bridges, it did remind me of Iron Man.
That's what I kept thinking.
The
It's like,
Ironmonger.
oh, okay, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Now he has this like lightsabery type of sword that turns red or something, and it's like it cuts through everything or something.
Well, it cut his claws.
I mean,
I think that's another thing. I'm not sure if in the comic his suit was adamantium. It might be. Obviously, if it is, it can cut his claws.
yeah. Didn't he say something like, "This is the world's supply of adamantium"
Yeah,
or
well,
something?
in the movie, they stockpile it and build the suit. Now, in the comic, again, I hate to not be right, but in the comic, it might not be a suit of adamantium. I can't remember. I'm getting old. Sorry.
Blame your age. Good one. You're lucky Tony's not here to slap you.
Yeah.
Well, towards the end of the movie, obviously, we kind of knew that Wolverine was going to win. But in this particular film, he has to give up his claws, which is something we haven't really seen
Right.
too much about. Like the X-Men film didn't go into it too much. Origins did go into it, and from what I remember, he
Yeah.
was born with the bone
With the
claws.
bone claws, yes.
And this is something we were kind of arguing back and forth about. He has two things going for him.
The healing factor.
He's the healing factor, the non-aging factor,
Right.
and the claw. Well, three things, and the claws.
Right.
So we kind of determined that as far as the comic book and even the film goes, because the film, obviously, he's supposed to be a lot younger than he really is. The actor is probably close to 50, I imagine.
He's
if
like
not
44.
Okay. But the character is probably in his 30s, let's say.
Well,
His
when he
late
stopped
30s.
aging.
Right.
Yeah.
So we kind of determined that as far as the movie goes, he's always been able to heal. He's always had the bone claws. And at a certain age, he stopped aging.
Right.
Then the adamantium was put in him
Was
when
grafted onto his skeleton.
somehow.
Yes. Which they kind of showed you in X-Men 2.
Yeah. But they didn't really explain how does that prevent the claws from coming out. Like, how does it stop the bone claws from coming out?
Well, isn't the adamantium grafted on? Look, the adamantium has got a skeleton, his bones, his claws are part of his bones. When they put the adamantium, like injected it into his body,
It covers
and
the-
it grafted onto his skeleton, and it grafted onto the claws. But now that I think about it, I could be wrong because when his claws are chopped off in the movie, his bone claws come out. So how could the adamantium have that would have?
Oh, wait.
Oh, the
it's
healing,
a healing
factor.
factor.
The healing factor.
So he did
So he
chop
regenerated-
off. He chopped off the Iron Samurai,
Silver Samurai.
Silver Samurai, the Iron Surfer, the Silver Surfer, the Iron Giant,
Vin Diesel. Guardians of the Galaxy.
Wait, the Iron Chef, the Silver
Groot.
Samurai,
Tony
the Iron-
Rossi.
So they chopped off both his metal and bone.
Because the metal is over the bone.
Right.
So they chop them off, and whatever you want to say, 5 minutes later, they
the bone
regenerate.
The metal is not there anymore.
Right, the metal is gone.
Now, obviously, at some point, we know in the future they're
Well,
going to have to give him.
But let's talk about the tag, the credits.
Okay,
The
now
music
this is
video.
one that you actually waited for, right?
No.
You missed this one
No.
too?
Oh, no. I didn't miss it.
Because
but
you have
I-
a track record lately
I
of
know.
missing the extra
Yes,
scene.
But I watched it online first. Somebody camcorded it, and I watched it online.
And let me tell you something. Not to say this was a bad movie, but this was the best thing about the
Oh, I
movie.
know. I was
and the movie
so
was pretty
excited.
good. Don't
The
get me
movie
wrong.
was-
The movie
I
was
loved
good.
it.
It was better than the last one.
Much better.
I think it's on par to a good X-Men film.
I would say X-Men 2, X-Men, this Wolverine,
Yes.
X-Men 3,
Yes.
and
Origins.
Origins.
You're absolutely
Oh,
right.
wait a minute. I got First Class. Let me do that again.
Ooh, okay, go ahead.
I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go X-Men 2, First Class, This Wolverine, X-Men,
Better than X-Men?
yeah. X-Men. Whoa. All right.
Let's do it again.
I'm going to do it again. Let me do it. X-Men 2.
Yes.
First Class.
Yes.
X-Men.
Yes.
This Wolverine.
Yes.
X-Men 3.
Yes.
Origins.
Yes. Finally, you've said something right.
Okay.
That's a good try.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I said before, no knocking this film at all because it was a very good film, but the ending almost stole the film.
Well, because of like what we saw at Comic-Con and what we know is coming.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like every X-Men fan's wet dream.
This is like the Avengers, even though we've seen X-Men films.
Yes.
What's coming down the line is so promising.
So, yeah. I mean, we're talking about one of, if not the preeminent X-Men story, Days of Future Past, which is just amazing. And came out around the same time as the Wolverine miniseries that this film is based
early
on.
80s?
Yeah, early 80s, which was like the Renaissance for X-Men. So they're doing their adaptation of this storyline. And again, I also reread Days of Future Past just for the hell of it because it's only 2 issues. And I know and I know that this story, it'll be somewhat of another loose adaptation, but just the idea of bringing these casts together, especially when I thought we would never see that other cast again from the original films, that they're coming back is just
This is like the original Star Trek cast
Yes,
getting together
exactly.
and doing a movie.
And I'm like,
it's like, what?
It's been what, like 8 years since X-Men 3? So, I mean, and X-Men 3 was not so great. Right. And now you have Bryan Singer back. So, I mean, this the mid-credit, whatever you want to call
let's talk about it. It's 2 years later.
2 years later.
He's coming back.
Still has the bone claws.
That's
Did you
right.
notice that?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He's coming back, old, kind of raggedy and old.
From wherever.
I don't know if he's coming back from Japan or is he coming back from somewhere else.
I get the sense
or Canada or something.
I don't know where he's coming from. But yes, he goes through the airport metal detector, and who's behind him? But Magneto is behind him. And what I'm looking forward to, so many things happened in X-Men 3 that pissed me off. And Magneto lost his powers. Professor X died. Cyclops died. Now, we don't know about Cyclops, but there he is.
I mean, he was on pieces.
No, but I'm saying, I don't know if Cyclops will come back.
Oh, okay.
They're saying no, but I don't believe that. I don't take that as a truth. So now, there's Magneto, got his powers back. He's messing with Logan, says, we need you.
And he's ready to go.
He's ready to go for it. And, he's like, you may not help me, but you'll help him. And there he is, Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard. And, the crowd goes wild. The crowd goes wild. I was just, I had seen it online.
See on the monitor, there's this new story about Trask, this whole new other phase.
Right, because they've started already the viral marketing of X-Men, the Days of Future Past. And,
Peter Dinklage plays
Bolivar Trask, creator of the Sentinels. And that's another thing. People, X-Men fans, of which I am not a huge I'm much more of an Avengers fan, but I do appreciate the X-Men. I think a lot of X-Men fans have been dying to see the Sentinels in a film, and you've seen like one Sentinel in the Danger Room sequence, which was very disappointing. And this time around, you're going to get a whole army of them. And what we've seen, the way they've done their sort of cool website, the Trask website, the viral site. I'm already juiced for this movie. I think all the cards are there for this to be possibly the best one. Could be. Maybe, I could be wrong. But, and it would have to go pretty, set the bar pretty high to, beat like X-Men 2. I mean, this scene just blew the doors off. I think of any credits scene.
Yes, definitely. At least this year, this was the best.
Yeah, the Iron Man one stunk.
This was the best post-credit scene that I've seen this year so far. I mean,
I agree.
I won't say this was the best.
I agree with Steve.
No, you have to agree with me.
No, I agree with Carlos.
Good. I would say this.
I agree with the kitty.
This isn't the best film we've seen this year, but it's the best post-credit scene we've seen this year.
Yes,
and
totally agree.
And hopefully there wasn't another one all the way at the end that we all missed.
We would have known.
Anyway.
But I think we can agree that we both really, really enjoyed this film.
Yes. Again, I hate knocking Iron Man 3, but it's like, it was better than Iron Man 3.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you there too. And I was really happy to see that this story finally got made. And honestly, what's actually kind of sad is that the domestic box office for this film is, I think as we're recording this, it's up to about 120 mil, whereas Origins made 175 mil. And, it's petering out. The Wolverine at this moment, it's kind of like dying out.
Well, again, as we've talked in the past, international, this gets a whole other world
Yeah.
when you get international.
Yeah.
Similar to what's happening with Pacific Rim, which we talked about in the past about how internationally is where it will probably live.
Yes.
This film probably has the same potential because of the fact that it takes place in Japan.
Yeah.
You
It's gonna go crazy,
You put
man.
this film in a different continent, specifically in a certain country, a very popular country, you know everybody's going to go
Yes.
see it, guaranteed.
Yes, good. Just make more.
I know. Keep them coming. Anyway, I want to thank Steve for joining me today, and hopefully
My
we'll see
pleasure.
you guys soon with more information and more of these films. Until then, see you soon here at Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
What do you want?
There are dark forces, Wolverine. Human forces building a weapon that could bring about the end of our kind. But I want your help.
Why would I trust you?
You wouldn't. Hello, Logan.
How is this possible? As I told you a long time ago, you're not the only one with gifts.
The Iron Chef, the Silver
Groot.
Samurai,
Tony
the Iron-
Rossi. Was I finished? I don't know that I was finished.